The wind screamed across the mountain like a wounded animal, throwing snow against the wooden walls of the tavern with such force that Marcus Hale could feel the building shudder beneath his feet. He stood alone behind the bar, wiping the same glass he had wiped 100 times that evening, watching the fire crackle and spit in the stone hearth. The weary traveler had seen many storms in its 200 years of existence, but this one felt different somehow, heavier, as if the sky itself was trying to bury the world beneath white silence. Marcus was 52 years old, and he had run this tavern for the last 15 of those years, ever since his wife Elena had passed from the colonial plague that swept through the outer settlements. His daughter Vaethra had followed her mother 6 months later, and Marcus had buried them both beneath the old oak tree behind the tavern, where they used to sit together and watch the summer sunsets. He never remarried. He never left. The tavern became his entire world, a place where travelers could find warmth and food and a bed without answering any questions they did not wish to answer. He asked nothing of his guests, except that they pay their bills and cause no trouble, and in return he offered them the same courtesy. Tonight there were no guests at all. The storm had closed the mountain passes 3 days ago, and Marcus had not seen another living soul since then. He finished wiping the glass and set it down on the shelf behind him, then walked to the window and peered out into the howling darkness. Nothing but white, endless and absolute, swallowing everything. He was about to turn away when he noticed something strange. The door to his woodshed, barely visible through the blizzard, was hanging open. Marcus frowned and pulled on his heavy coat, wrapping a scarf around his face before stepping out into the frozen nightmare. A physical blow, stealing the breath from his lungs and making his eyes water instantly. He pushed forward through snow that reached his knees, fighting against the wind that seemed determined to throw him back. When he reached the woodshed, he grabbed the door and pulled it wider, expecting to find that the latch had simply failed in the storm. Instead, he found something that would change his life forever. A creature lay crumpled among the firewood, 7 feet tall and impossibly thin, with skin so pale and translucent that Marcus could see bioluminescent veins pulsing faintly beneath the surface. It had 4 arms folded against its frail torso, and a face that was almost human, but stretched in ways that made his mind struggle to comprehend what he was seeing. The creature's eyes opened slowly, and they were like looking into deep pools of liquid silver, ancient and tired, and filled with more pain than Marcus had ever seen in any living thing. That was not a voice, entered his mind, bypassing his ears entirely, and resonating somewhere deep in his skull. Sanctuary, it said, or rather it felt, because the word carried with it a weight of exhaustion and desperation that no spoken language could have conveyed. Please. Marcus stood there in the freezing darkness, snow piling on his shoulders, staring down at this impossible being that had somehow found its way to his doorstep. He thought about calling the authorities, about the protocols that existed for extraterrestrial contact, about the 100 sensible things a reasonable man would do in this situation. Then he thought about Elena dying in his arms, while he begged the universe for just one more day with her. He thought about little Vaethra, asking him why Mama had to go away, and him having no answer that could make sense of such cruelty. He thought about all the nights he had spent alone in this tavern, wondering if kindness even mattered anymore in a universe that seemed so indifferent to suffering. The creature shivered violently, and several of those glowing veins flickered and went dark. It was dying, Marcus realized with sudden clarity. Whatever this thing was, wherever it had come from, it was dying right here in his woodshed, while he stood there thinking about protocols. "Can you move at all?" he asked out loud, not knowing if the creature could understand him. The silver eyes blinked slowly, and one of those 4 arms reached toward him, with agonizing effort. Marcus made his decision. He bent down and slid his arms beneath the creature, surprised to find that despite its size, it weighed almost nothing, like holding a bundle of dry branches wrapped in silk. He carried it through the storm and into the tavern, kicking the door shut behind him and laying the creature down on the rug in front of the fire. Its translucent skin immediately began to flush with color, as warmth seeped into its body, and those bioluminescent veins pulsed a little brighter. Marcus grabbed blankets from the storage closet and piled them over the creature. Then he went to the kitchen and heated some water, not knowing what else to do. When he returned, the creature's eyes were open again and watching him with an expression he could not read. "Why?" the voice in his mind asked, and again the word carried emotions beneath it, confusion and suspicion, and something that might have been hope. Marcus knelt beside the creature and placed the warm water nearby, just in case it could drink. "Because you asked for help," he said simply, "and I was here to give it." The creature stared at him for a long moment, those ancient silver eyes searching his face for something. Then it closed its eyes and slept, and Marcus sat beside it through the long hours of the night, feeding the fire and keeping watch over a stranger from the stars. Storm continued to rage, but inside the weary traveler there was warmth and light, and the quiet sound of two beings breathing together in the darkness. Marcus did not know what tomorrow would bring, or what he had just invited into his life, but he knew that he could not have made any other choice, and still called himself a man. Elena would have done the same thing, and so would little Vaethra. Kindness was the only legacy they had left him, and he would not betray it now. 3 weeks passed, and the creature grew stronger each day, though stronger was perhaps the wrong word for what was happening. Marcus had moved it to the cellar beneath the tavern, a space he had converted into a hidden sanctuary, with blankets and cushions and soft lights that seemed to soothe the alien's sensitive eyes. He learned to communicate with it through touch, placing his hand against one of those 4 slender arms, and feeling thoughts and images flow directly into his mind, like water pouring into an empty vessel. The creature's true name was a complex series of harmonic vibrations that human vocal cords could never produce, and human ears could never properly hear. So Marcus called it Vaethra, after his daughter's middle name, and the creature accepted this gift with something that felt like gratitude. "You named me after your child," Vaethra said one evening, as Marcus sat beside her in the cellar, sharing a meal of warm bread and soup. Aliens seemed to enjoy despite having no visible mouth. "This means something deep to your species, does it not?" "It means I care about you," Marcus replied simply. "It means you matter to me." Vaethra was silent for a long moment, and Marcus felt waves of emotion washing through their connection, old sorrow and new wonder mixing together like currents in a river. "I am 400,000 years old," Vaethra said finally. "I have witnessed the birth and death of stars. I have walked on worlds that no longer exist. I have seen civilizations rise and fall like waves upon an endless shore. And yet in all that time, no one has ever given me a name born from love." Marcus did not know what to say to that, so he simply squeezed Vaethra's arm gently and continued eating his soup. Over the following days, Vaethra told him stories that made his head spin and his heart ache with the sheer scope of them. She was an elder architect, one of a species that had existed since the universe was young, beings who had seeded life across countless galaxies and watched it evolve over billions of years. They did not die of age or disease, but of something called fading, a slow loss of purpose and meaning that eventually caused their bodies to simply stop existing. Vaethra was fading. She had come to Earth because she had sensed something unique here, something she had not encountered anywhere else in all her travels across the cosmos. "Humans create meaning from nothing," she explained one night, her silver eyes reflecting the candlelight. Other species find purpose in their biology, or their society, or their gods, but humans, you make it up as you go along. You tell yourself stories, and then you believe them so completely that they become real. You love things that do not exist and fight for ideas that have no physical form. It is terrifying and beautiful and utterly unlike anything else in the universe. Came here? Marcus asked. To find meaning? I came here to remember what meaning felt like, Vaithra replied. I came here to die near creatures who still believed that dying mattered. Marcus discovered something remarkable over the following weeks. Vaithra did not eat food the way humans did. She absorbed emotional resonance, the feelings and memories and stories that living beings carried within them. When Marcus told her about Elena, about how they met at a harvest festival and danced until dawn, Vaithra's veins glowed brighter for hours afterward. When he recited poetry his mother had taught him as a child, Vaithra sighed with contentment like someone savoring a fine meal. When he played old songs on his battered guitar and sang in his rough, untrained voice, Vaithra wept silver tears that evaporated before they touched the ground. Your species is so short-lived, Vaithra said one evening. Most galactic civilizations consider you children. Dangerous and unpredictable children who might destroy yourselves at any moment. They avoid your world because they fear what you might become. And what do you think we might become? Marcus asked. Vaithra turned those ancient silver eyes toward him and smiled, or at least made an expression that felt like smiling through their mental connection. I think you might become anything at all, she said. That is what makes you so frightening and so wonderful. You have no limits because you do not believe in limits. You simply refuse to accept that something cannot be done. Marcus laughed at that, a genuine laugh that surprised him because he had not laughed like that since Elena died. Maybe that is why you really came here, he said. Maybe you did not come to die near us. Maybe you came because you needed a little chaos in your life. Vaithra was quiet for a long time after that, and Marcus felt something shifting in their connection. Old walls crumbling, ancient defenses lowering, for perhaps the first time in millennia. Perhaps you are right, she admitted. Perhaps I needed to be reminded that the universe is not finished yet, that there are still surprises left to discover, that even after 400,000 years, there are still beings who can show me something new. She reached out with one of her 4 hands and touched his face gently, and Marcus felt her gratitude flowing into him like warm sunlight. Thank you for the stories, Marcus Hale, she said. Thank you for giving me your memories and your songs and your grief and your hope. Thank you for naming me after your daughter. Thank you for being kind when you had every reason not to be. Marcus covered her hand with his own and smiled. Thank you for not dying in my woodshed, he replied. That would have been very hard to explain to the authorities. Vaithra laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze, and for a moment, the cellar felt like the warmest place in the entire universe. Spring came slowly to the mountain, melting the snow in patches and revealing the brown earth beneath like skin healing after a long illness. The passes opened again, and travelers began returning to the weary traveler, seeking food and rest and the simple comfort of a warm fire after long journeys through the wilderness. Marcus served them all with the same quiet courtesy he had always shown, pouring drinks and cooking meals and listening to their stories without judgment. But something had changed in him, and the more observant guests noticed it immediately. There was a light in his eyes that had not been there before, a sense of peace that seemed to radiate from him like heat from a stove. You seem different, one old woman told him as she paid her bill. Happier somehow. Did something good happen to you over the winter? Marcus just smiled and wished her safe travels, keeping his secrets locked behind his teeth where they belonged. Strange customers started arriving. The first was a man who seemed too perfect, with features that were slightly too symmetrical, and movements that were slightly too smooth, like a painting of a person rather than an actual person. He ordered a meal and ate it slowly, his eyes scanning the tavern with careful attention, lingering on the door to the cellar for just a moment too long. "Beautiful place you have here," he said to Marcus. "Very remote, very quiet, the kind of place where interesting things might hide without being noticed." "Just a tavern," Marcus replied evenly. "Nothing interesting about it." The man smiled and left a generous tip, but his eyes told a different story, sharp and calculating and hungry for something Marcus could not name. More of them came over the following weeks, all of them wrong in subtle ways that most people would never notice. A woman who never blinked, a child who asked questions about atmospheric anomalies, vocabulary no child should possess, a pair of twins who finished each other's sentences in ways that seemed rehearsed rather than natural. They all asked questions, always polite, always indirect, circling around something without ever naming it directly. Marcus told Vaethra about them during their nightly conversations in the cellar, and he felt her fears spike through their connection like ice water in his veins. "They have found me," she said, her bioluminescent veins dimming with distress. "I thought I had more time. I thought this world was too primitive for them to search thoroughly, but they have found me." "Who?" Marcus demanded. "Who are they?" Vaethra closed her silver eyes, and Marcus felt her shame flooding through their bond, old and heavy and bitter. "They call themselves the Sovereignty of United Vessels," she explained. "They are a coalition of younger species who rose to power after the Elder Architects retreated from galactic affairs. They believe that my kind hoarded forbidden knowledge, secrets that could destroy or remake reality itself, and perhaps they are right to fear us." "What kind of secrets?" "The knowledge of how to create new universes, the ability to unmake what exists and build something entirely different in its place. My species discovered these truths billions of years ago, and we chose never to use them. But the Sovereignty does not believe in restraint. They only believe in control." She opened her eyes and looked at Marcus with an expression of terrible regret. "The Sovereignty exterminates Elder Architects wherever they find us. They have hunted my kind to near extinction over the past 100,000 years. I came to Earth because humans are considered too primitive and too dangerous to bother with. I thought I would be safe here. I thought I could fade in peace without endangering anyone else." Marcus felt cold understanding settling in his chest. "Like a stone. You used me," he said quietly. "You used my kindness to hide yourself." "Yes," Vaethra admitted, and her silver tears began to fall. "I used you, and I am ashamed of it. I told myself that you would never know, that I would fade before anyone discovered me, that my presence would bring you no harm. But I was wrong, and I was selfish, and I am sorry." She began to rise, her forearms pushing weakly against the cushions. "I should leave," she said. "I should go far from here before they arrive. Perhaps I can lead them away from you. Perhaps there is still time." Marcus reached out and grabbed one of her arms, stopping her. "Are you still dying?" he asked. Vaethra paused and looked at him with confusion. "Yes," she said. "The fading cannot be reversed. I have perhaps days left, maybe a week if I am fortunate." "Then you are still welcome here," Marcus said firmly. "I do not care why you came, or what you were hiding from. That you are my friend, and you are dying, and you have nowhere else to go." Vaethra stared at him as if he had suddenly started speaking in a language she had never heard. "You should hate me," she whispered. "You should throw me out and save yourself." "I lost my wife and my daughter," Marcus replied. "I know what it feels like to be abandoned by the universe. I will not do that to someone else, not when I have the power to do otherwise." He guided her back down onto the cushions and pulled the blankets over her trembling form. "Whatever comes," he said, "we will face it together. That is what friends do." Vaethra wept then, truly wept, and through their connection, Marcus felt something he had never expected from a being 400,000 years old. He felt hope. They came on a quiet evening when the sky was painted in shades of orange and purple, and the mountain air was sweet with the smell of spring flowers. Marcus was wiping down the bar, when he heard the sound, a low humming that seemed to vibrate in his bones rather than his ears, growing louder and closer with each passing second. He walked to the window and looked up at the sky, and his heart turned to ice in his chest. 3 black vehicles descended from the clouds, angular and sharp and utterly silent except for that bone-deep hum, moving with a grace that no human technology could match. They landed in the clearing in front of the tavern, their surfaces drinking in the fading light like holes cut in the fabric of reality. Marcus stood very still and watched as hatches opened and figures emerged. There were 7 of them, tall and insectoid, with segmented bodies covered in reflective armor that shifted colors as they moved. Their heads were elongated and smooth, with compound eyes that glittered like clusters of black diamonds, and their limbs ended in manipulator appendages that could have been hands or weapons, or both. The leader was slightly taller than the others, and wore a crimson sash across its thorax, the only splash of color among the dark armor. It approached the tavern door and entered without knocking, and the others fanned out behind it in a formation that spoke of long practice and absolute confidence. "Marcus Hale," the leader said, and its voice was surprisingly melodic, despite coming from a mouth that seemed designed for tearing rather than speaking. "I am Commandant Vreth of the Sovereignty of United Vessels. We have tracked an extinction-level entity to this location, and we require your cooperation." Marcus forced himself to breathe normally, even though every instinct in his body was screaming at him to run. "I am just a tavern keeper," he said calmly. "I do not know anything about any entities." Vreth tilted its angular head in a gesture that might have been amusement. "The energy signatures we have detected are unmistakable," it said. "An elder architect is hiding somewhere on these premises, and standard protocol requires that any organic beings who have harbored such an entity must be recycled along with the target." "Recycled," Marcus repeated. "Is that what you call murder?" "We call it sanitation," Vreth replied without emotion. "The elder architects possess knowledge that could unmake the universe itself. Any being contaminated by prolonged exposure to them represents an unacceptable risk to galactic stability." Marcus felt fear crawling up his spine like cold fingers, but beneath that fear he felt something else rising, something hot and stubborn and utterly human. He walked behind the bar and pulled out a bottle of his best whiskey, the one he saved for special occasions. Then he poured 2 glasses and set one on the bar, in front of the empty stool nearest to Vreth. "Sit down," he said. "Have a drink with me." Vreth's compound eyes glittered with what might have been surprise. "You are offering refreshment to the being who has come to execute you?" "I am offering hospitality to a traveler who has entered my tavern," Marcus replied. "That is what I do. That is what I have always done, regardless of who the traveler is or why they have come." The other enforcers shifted uncomfortably, clearly unsettled by this response. Vreth stared at Marcus for a long moment, then made a clicking sound that might have been laughter, and sat down on the stool. It picked up the glass with one manipulator appendage and examined the amber liquid inside. "Your species is strange," Vreth observed. "Most beings we encounter at this stage of an operation either flee or fight. They do not pour drinks." "I am too old to flee and too weak to fight," Marcus said, sitting down across from the alien commander. "But I can still be civilized. I can still treat you like a person instead of a monster, even if you have come here to kill me." Vreth took a sip of the whiskey, and its compound eyes widened slightly. "This is remarkably good," it admitted. "I have been told that humans were primitive, but this level of chemical craftsmanship suggests otherwise." "We have our moments," Marcus replied. "Now tell me something, Commandant. Why does the Sovereignty fear the Elder Architects so deeply?" "They could remake reality," Vreth said simply. "They possess the knowledge to erase everything that exists and build something new in its place. Entire civilizations, entire histories, entire ways of being, all of it could be wiped away like marks on a slate. And has any elder architect ever actually done this? Vreth was silent for a moment. No, it admitted finally. In the 4 billion years since they discovered this knowledge, the elder architects have never used it, but the potential remains. The threat remains. The being hiding in my cellar is over 400,000 years old, Marcus said quietly. She is dying, Commandant, truly dying. In a few days, she will simply cease to exist. And in all that time, she has never harmed anyone. She has only watched and wondered and tried to understand. He leaned forward and met those glittering compound eyes with his own tired human gaze. If she wanted to erase you, she would have done it already. Maybe she just wants to rest. Maybe she just wants to fade away in peace, without being hunted like an animal. Is that really so dangerous? Vreth set down the whiskey glass and rose from the stool. Your words are interesting, it said, but they do not change my orders. We will proceed to the cellar now and complete our mission. The other enforcers moved toward the door that led to the cellar stairs. From his seat, and walked over to stand in front of them, blocking their path. He had no weapons, no armor, no special powers of any kind. He was just a tired, middle-aged man who ran a tavern in the mountains and missed his wife and daughter every single day. But he stood there anyway, placing his fragile human body between the hunters and their prey. Move aside, Vreth commanded, or you will be removed. No, Marcus said simply. Vreth tilted its head again. You would die for this creature? I would die for my friend, Marcus replied. That is what humans do. We love things that are different from us. We fight for beings we have only known for a few weeks. We stand in front of monsters, even when we know we cannot win. It is irrational and foolish, and it is the best thing about us. He spread his arms wide, making himself a larger target. So go ahead, Commandant, recycle me, but know that every human who hears this story will remember it, and they will remember that your sovereignty was afraid of a dying creature who only wanted peace. Vreth stood very still, and Marcus could feel the weight of the alien's gaze pressing down on him like a physical force. Then a voice spoke in all of their minds at once. That is enough, Marcus, Vaethra said, as she emerged from the cellar stairs behind him. I will not let you die for me. Vaethra moved slowly through the doorway, her forearms hanging limply at her sides, her bioluminescent veins pulsing so faintly that Marcus could barely see them anymore. She looked ancient and fragile and impossibly tired, like a candle that had burned for so long that only the faintest flicker of flame remained. The enforcers raised their weapons immediately, training them on her with mechanical precision. But Vreth held up one manipulator appendage, and they froze in place, waiting for orders that did not come. Elder Architect, Vreth said, and there was something in its voice that Marcus had not heard before, something that sounded almost like awe. You reveal yourself willingly. I will not let another being suffer for my sake, Vaethra replied, her mental voice washing over all of them like a gentle wave. This human has shown me more kindness than I have experienced in 100,000 years. He has fed me his stories, and his memories, and his love. I will not repay that gift by letting him die. She moved past Marcus and stood before Vreth, towering over the insectoid commander despite her obvious weakness. You fear what I know, she said. You fear the secrets locked inside my mind, the power to unmake and remake reality itself. But look at me, Commandant. I am fading. In a few days, I will be nothing at all, just empty space where a being used to exist. What threatens you then? Vreth's compound eyes studied her for a long moment. The knowledge survives even when the body fails, it replied. We have seen elder architects transfer their consciousness to other vessels at the moment of death. We cannot risk that happening with you. Then let me offer you something better than risk, Vaethra said, and Marcus felt a surge of determination flowing through their connection. Let me show you a solution that eliminates your concerns forever. She turned to Marcus and reached out with one trembling hand. So I will transfer my knowledge, she announced. Not to another elder, not to a vessel that could use it as a weapon, but to this human. The enforcers shifted nervously, and Vreth made a sharp clicking sound. A human? It demanded. You would give the power to unmake reality to one of the most chaotic and unstable species in the galaxy. That is exactly why it will be safe, Vaethra replied, and Marcus could feel her certainty radiating through their bond. Humans forget. They die. Their minds cannot hold information the way ours can. The knowledge will not sit in Marcus's consciousness like a loaded weapon. It will sink into his deeper being. It will echo through his descendants for 10,000 generations, surfacing only as dreams and intuitions and moments of inexplicable creativity. She turned back to Vreth. My knowledge will become art, she said. It will become poetry and music and stories that no one fully understands. Inspire and confuse and delight. But it will never be power. It will never be a threat. Because humans cannot help but transform everything they touch into something new. Vreth stood motionless, processing this offer. You are asking us to trust humans, it said finally. You are asking us to believe that the most volatile species in the galaxy will not find a way to weaponize the most dangerous knowledge in existence. I am asking you to observe what is right in front of you, Vaethra replied. This man found a dying alien in his woodshed. Any logical being would have called the authorities, would have protected themselves, would have seen me as a threat to be eliminated. But Marcus carried me inside and wrapped me in blankets and fed me soup, because he could not bear to let another creature suffer alone. She gestured at Marcus with one frail arm. That is what humans are, she said. They are chaos, yes. They are dangerous, yes. But they are also capable of kindness that defies all reason. They love things that are different from them. They sacrifice themselves for strangers. They create beauty in the darkest corners of the universe, simply because they cannot help themselves. Marcus felt tears stinging his eyes, and he did not try to stop them from falling. You can kill us both, Vaethra continued. You can eliminate this small threat and return to the sovereignty with your mission complete. But you will gain nothing from it. I am dying anyway, and my knowledge will simply disperse into the void, meaningless and lost forever. She took a step closer to Vreth. Or you can let me give my gift to this human and walk away, knowing that the threat has been neutralized in a way that harms no one. The knowledge will be scattered across generations of dreams, diluted and transformed and made safe by the very instability you fear so much. Vreth turned to look at Marcus, and for the first time, the alien commander seemed uncertain. Human, it said. Do you accept this burden willingly? Marcus wiped his eyes and straightened his shoulders. I accept whatever my friend wants to give me, he replied, and I will carry it with honor for whatever time I have left. Vreth was silent for a long moment that stretched into an eternity. Then it made a gesture, and the enforcers lowered their weapons. The sovereignty of united vessels will withdraw, Vreth announced. This matter is concluded. It turned and walked toward the door, then paused and looked back at Marcus. You are a strange being, Tavern Keeper, it said. I have executed thousands of targets across 100 worlds, and none of them ever offered me a drink first. I do not understand your species at all. Maybe that is the point, Marcus replied. Maybe we are not meant to be understood. Vreth made that clicking sound again, the one that might have been laughter, and then it was gone. Enforcers following behind it, like shadows. Marcus heard the humming of the vessels rising into the sky and fading into the distance, and then there was silence. He turned to Vaethra, and found her swaying on her feet, her silver eyes dimming. "It is time," she whispered. "I have held on long enough." She reached out and touched his forehead with one gentle finger. The universe exploded inside Marcus's mind. He saw stars being born and dying. He saw civilizations rising and falling like grass in the wind. He saw the mathematics that underlay reality itself. Equations so beautiful that they made him weep, and so terrible that they made him scream. He felt 400,000 years of memory compressed into a single instant of searing, overwhelming transcendence. And then it was over, and he was lying on the floor of his tavern, gasping for breath, tears streaming down his face. Vaethra was dissolving above him, her body turning to light. Bioluminescent veins, flaring one final time like a sunset at the end of a perfect day. "Thank you for the stories, Marcus Hale," she said, her voice fading like a song carried away by the wind. "Thank you for the soup and the warmth and the kindness and the name." She smiled, and it was the most beautiful thing Marcus had ever seen. "Take care of my gift," she whispered. "Share it with your children and their children and all the children who come after. Let it become dreams. Let it become art. Let it become hope." Then she was gone, and Marcus was alone in his tavern with nothing but the fire crackling in the hearth and the empty space where his friend had been. He sat there for a long time, weeping, feeling the echoes of 1,000,000,000 years reverberating through his soul. Then he stood up and walked to his desk and pulled out a pen and paper. He began to write. Stories poured out of him like water from a broken dam. Myths and legends and poems. Languages he did not understand. Star maps and equations and songs that made no sense but felt absolutely right. He wrote through the night and into the morning, and for many days and nights after that. Travelers who stopped at the Weary Traveler noticed that something had changed about the place. The fire burned warmer than any fire should. The food tasted like memories of happiness, and people left feeling inexplicably hopeful about their lives. Marcus never told anyone what had happened, but sometimes late at night he would pour 2 glasses of whiskey and sit at the bar with an empty stool beside him. And sometimes in the quiet hours before dawn he would raise his glass to that empty space and whisper words of gratitude to a friend who had given him the universe. Centuries later, scholars would study the strange writings that originated from a mountain tavern in a remote corner of Earth, trying to understand how one ordinary man had somehow known things that human science would not discover for another 1,000 years. They never found an answer. But sometimes, in the dreams of children descended from Marcus Hale, a bioluminescent voice would whisper gentle truths about the nature of reality and the importance of kindness. And they would wake with tears on their faces and hope in their hearts and a strange certainty that somewhere out among the stars, a friend was smiling.